I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online and on air with RT Radio, we bring you the very latest in tech from Ireland and across the world. You're welcome to episode 1027, looking back on the 7 biggest stories of the week, including how Trump is starting to affect the tech industry, SpaceX is moving its Earth base, and would you take free virus security from Russia? Let's go.
From TechCentral.ie, this is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Niall Kitson on holiday this week. Joining us instead is a Tech Central journalist, Jason Walsh. Jason, great to see you again. How are you?
I'm very good, Dusty. It's great to be back. How are you?
Very, very well. Let's start off with the first story of the week. Donald Trump has announced who his vice president is going to be. It turns out he's come from tech somewhere and he may have a very big effect on tech if they're elected. Tell me all.
Yeah, this is very interesting because I think it indicates a real cleave opening up in the tech industry between those who support the Democrats and those who don't. And historically, tech has been completely dominated by what Americans call the left. They're not really the left to us, but like liberal, progressive politics. Now, this is why it's interesting. Vance used to be an anti-Trump Republican. He was a young law student, and then he became a venture capitalist working for Peter Thiel. He's involved in all this kind of in the startup scene, funding them. Then he became famous for writing a book called Hillbilly Elegy about his roots in rural working class Appalachia, and that was made into a movie, made him quite famous. Then he had a real change of heart when someone dangled the prospect of power in front of him, and he, funded by Peter Thiel, ran as a senator, which he won, became very pro-Trump, having previously called him, the possible next American Hitler, among other things. Now, what's really interesting here isn't just that, Trump has picked this kind of strange right-wing running mate, big deal. What is interesting is that he comes from the tech world, yet he represents an absolute break from the kind of history of the politics of tech, because even though if you dig back into its roots, Silicon Valley got its start with military contracts, for semiconductors and missiles back in the 50s and 60s. It has, since the 60s, been a pretty much left, liberal, hippie influenced kind of thing. You think about companies like Apple and, even Google, they have tended to support and vote for the kind of democratic liberal agenda. Now it looks like Trump is staking a claim. Now, there are backers of Trump in the tech world. Mark Andreessen, the venture capitalist who was the original developer of the Netscape browser, his company Andreessen Horowitz, both principals have come out in favor of Trump. Elon Musk, of course, is coming out increasingly loudly in front of Trump, donating hundreds of millions of dollars. And Peter Thiel, who runs the sort of spy company Palantir, is a notorious, well-known figure on the right. So it's interesting. But there's a catch. It's not just, tech is turned right wing because, obviously these are large companies that want, tax cuts and all the usual kind of things that people who have a lot of money want. But, Vance has said today, in fact, that he will not support Wall Street at the expense of American workers. So it's almost like tech is becoming kind of nativist. It's not left or right. I mean, I think Vance is pretty much a right-winger, but he's also kind of appealing to this domestic agenda, bring jobs home, all this kind of stuff. So it's very interesting to watch the kind of traditional, tech, generic liberal opinions are being threatened. Now, I did read in one of the San Francisco papers that this represents a breakaway from the kind of Xerox PARC, HP, Apple, Google tech companies that have big labs and make stuff toward the kind of more Bitcoin and strange end of tech. Now, I don't know if that's accurate, but I certainly find it interesting.
I think it's really interesting seeing Elon Musk, who you mentioned, and the fact that he is really throwing his weight behind Trump as well. And he said, only somebody like Elon Musk could say, I'm going to donate $45 million to the campaign, and then add every single day 45 million every day is like, I don't know why he's doing it. There must be a reason for doing that. But Musk actually is it's interesting to see how his thinking is changing and what's happening in his personal life and how it's affecting him politically and his business and stuff like that, because he has announced this week that he is moving X and he's going to move SpaceX to Texas. He's getting out of California. All right. Now, I think the real reason behind this is that Texas is a tax-friendly friendly state. So we had the whole thing about Musk and his personal income and his shareholdings, and it all works very well in Texas and not in Delaware and not in California and stuff like that. But what he says is the reason is a new Californian law, which he described as the last straw, where schools cannot report a child who wishes to change their pronoun to the parents. So if I had a kid in a Californian school and it was a boy and he said, you know what, I want to identify as a she from now on, he can say that in school and they will do that, and I would be completely unaware. All right.
Yeah, your analysis of why Musk is doing this is spot on. I have no doubt, I was going to say I don't doubt Musk's sincerity, but I do. But I have no doubt that this...
There's a bit of backstory which I didn't know about, all right? And it's gone back a couple of years where Musk has some experience in this area, because from his first marriage, he had two twin boys, and one of them has decided to become a transgender daughter. Originally named Vivian, originally named Xavier, pardon me, and is now Vivian. There was a really public bust up where she said that she no longer wants to be related in any way to her biological father. So that relationship is over. And I'm thinking it's because Musk has his own opinion on transgenderism and she wanted to do it. And now the state of California is kind of moving the same way as Vivian is. And he's pissed, basically.
I mean, who knows? I mean, family crisis, people do have opinions outside of economics, but I don't think that large companies like Musk, even ones led by people that are as much a loose cannon as he is, make decisions based on, being irritated at a law. I think California has a lot of regulations in general. It just happens to have been the epicenter of American tech because of the development of Silicon Valley. But other states, I was going to say counties, like Texas, they want some of that lovely money, and they're trying to attract people by having lower taxes and less regulation, and I think that is what appeals to Elon Musk. So I think the real story here is, hey, if I move it all to Texas, I can keep more money.
I think I would agree with that. I do like the cover story, but I do agree. I think it's all about money. It's always about money in the end, isn't it? Elsewhere in the news this week, Snowflake. Now tell me who Snowflake are and why the data breaches are so bad.
Snowflake is what I would have been if I had any sense when I was 18 and I was seriously considering getting an old Linux server and connecting up to the internet and selling space, but which I didn't know at the time. I thought it'd be a small business, and it's turned out to be one of the world's largest. Snowflake is what is called a data, or if you're American, data warehouse. It is a cloud service where you can buy a load of server space. It's all set up for you. You don't have to do anything yourself, and you can white label it and run your whole back end of your business off it. A lot of companies did, including, apparently, although we can't prove it, Santander, the bank, Ticketmaster. Oh, by the way, Santander wasn't running accounts on it. It was running other stuff because finance is still quite heavily regulated. Ticketmaster, Advanced Auto Parts, and telco giant AT&T, among as many as 165 other companies who have all now been breached because Snowflake did not enforce two-factor authentication. They offered it, but customers did not have to use it. And when you don't have to use it, a lot of people don't bother. A hacking group was able to breach the single-factor authentication, and they have run riot. This, so far, has affected Ticketmaster, an Australian outfit that does the same thing as Ticketmaster. I don't know if they're the same company. Apparently Santander, like I say, AT&T and Advanced Auto Parts, a whole bunch of other businesses. This could turn out to be a hack that is going to roll on and on for the next year, because all of this data, it's already gone. We're not talking about that you can fix it now, but they've already got all the data from who knows how many of these companies.
The horse has already bolted the stable, as they say. But is this a Snowflake problem or is it a client problem? Because Snowflake have offered the two-factor authentication and the clients decided not to. And it's because the clients decided not to that all the gear has been nicked.
That is, as they say, a matter for the courts to decide, I suspect. But my opinion is that it's a Snowflake problem insofar as they have admitted in their SEC filing that it will likely have a negative impact on their the value of their shares. However, yes, I think it's the clients. I think if you didn't set up the 2FA, kind of your fault. I think that's what's going to happen.
The thing is, I don't know where to sit on 2FA because I know that it's absolutely essential and I do use it for more important stuff, but not for everything, because having to, kind of do a second login for everything is just, it's bad enough having passwords for everything, but then having to have 2 passwords for everything is a nightmare.
Yeah, I actually wrote an article about that. Sorry.
Go on, you have, what's the...
No, I was going to say I wrote an article about this for a paper recently, and I mean, like, passwords are just a nightmare. I'll just give you a very quick example. I smashed my phone last week, dropped it, went out and bought a new one. I still haven't set it up fully. I put my work email on it and a couple of other things. I just cannot be bothered putting all those passwords back in.
Boom. Yeah, and I know kind of they're bringing in passkeys now and stuff like that. And like passkeys is good because it'll sit on your computer and you don't even have to log in and remember it, and it's super secure. But the problem is, who uses a single computer? I know I've got 2 computers. I've got a laptop, I've got 2 phones, and I've got a tablet. And it all depends on where I am as to what I'm using. So passkeys are kind of like, am I going to use all these things all over the place? So it is interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to
the guy who invented passwords has described them as a nightmare.
I don't blame him. Give me the link after the podcast, and I will stick that into the show notes. All right, for that article if anybody wants to read it. What else have we got going on in the world today? I don't know how your tech feeds have been during the week, but I've been quite annoyed this year because my tech feeds have all been full of announcements about Prime Day on Amazon. This bargain, that bargain, SSDs, leads, USB cables, computers, laptops, headphones. It's like, hello, can we get away from this and just give me the news, which is what I want. But it turns out at the end of this whole Prime Day week that there's a new report in the States that says the Prime Day should be known as Danger Day. Because in 2019, 45% of warehouse workers in 2019 were injured during Prime Day at Amazon. 45% of their workers injured in the 2019 Prime Day.
We'll get on to Amazon's staff practices in a second, I'm sure. But that does also tell you something about the scale of Amazon's warehousing operations. They must be massive.
Well, I mean, you see the size of one on the Nice Road, and it takes 10 minutes to drive past the darn thing. Like, it's ridiculous. But yeah,
Amazon is a sketchy company in some. Look, on the one hand, it's an excellent company. Everyone loves its service. It's one of the true pioneers of e-commerce. If you invested in anything else during the dot-com bubble, you're probably bankrupt. But if you invest in Amazon, you're probably retired, living on a yacht or something. But, when I was dealing with some family matters a couple of years ago, I had to close some bank accounts and bits and pieces. And I discovered that a relative of mine had signed up to Prime and never used it. And then I realized that they had basically been misled into doing so, because it's really hard to get to the checkout if you're not a tech-savvy person without accidentally subscribing to Prime. And that's not the worst sin in the world, but it does just sort of tell you a little bit about Amazon's chasing the bottom line. We also have heard stories for years about temperatures in the factory and working conditions, 0-hour contracts, not factory, warehouses. I'm not surprised that people are getting injured. I would suggest that some, didn't they try and unionize? I don't know if it was successful. It might change things if they do. I
can't remember, but there is a union. It's not a union. It's an organization of unions in the States who backed up that report. And they said that of all warehouse injuries that happened in the States, 53 of them happened at an Amazon warehouse. That's just bananas, isn't it? I mean, Amazon are kind of going, wow, those are old reports, they're old numbers, we've improved things significantly, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like you. I love Amazon. I love the service. I love the fact that I can order that and blah, blah, a day or two later, it arrives at my door and there's very little I have to do about it, and free delivery and all that kind of blah, 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 blah. But the one thing that you do hear a lot is that conditions for workers in the warehouses, and even you see it with the drivers and stuff like that, they're just under pressure all the time.
I'll tell you something worse. Well, it's not worse actually, but it's interesting. Even the tech people at Amazon who are, relatively well paid tech sector it's much tougher conditions there, I have heard, than in like Google or Facebook or Apple. Now, I'm not going to shed too many tears, but it just tells you something about the company culture. It's very ruthless.
It's ruthless, and it's that ruthlessness that has made it so efficient, and that's why we as consumers love it.
Yes, because we're all horrible hypocrites.
Well, we are all horrible hypocrites, because we all kind of go around going, oh, it's terrible that, kind of all of these people and children are making sneakers. Do you know what I mean? But we still go out and buy them. and if we get a bargain on them, yeah, great. So it's just...
And we all want jobs to come home, but we also want everything cheap. So,
That's human. Now, speaking of cheap, I alluded in the intro that if you wanted free virus security, you can have it. And the only catch is it's Russian. Tell me everything.
I think you have to be an existing customer, but basically what's happening here is taking a long time to happen, but this is part of the fallout from the US sanctions against Russian companies and Russia in general. Kaspersky, which is a major kind of cloud-based security provider, Russian outfit, has basically given up on its attempt to stay in the US market. It's pulling out. So, the US told it to get out. It fought it for a while, but it's just going, no, we give up. But as a sort of parting gift, they are giving 6 months of free secure cybersecurity to their customers. I don't know how many customers they have left. This might be a very easy thing to promise when everyone has fled. It's interesting, though, that Kaspersky has done this because another Russian tech outfit has taken the opposite approach, which is Yandex, which most people in the West probably haven't heard of, but it's a gigantic Russian search engine, AI, all the Russian Google, They have basically, they were also suffering from sanctions, so they have basically sold off, or in the process of selling off, all of their Russian operations. They're a Russian-founded company, remember. They're relocating back to Western Europe, I think it's the Netherlands, and they're going to start all over again as a small business.
That's insane. But it's nice. In some ways, it's kind of nice to know that the sanctions are taking effect. I read that there was just a couple of things that popped across my radar for some reason. Somebody was kind of saying, the sanctions are there and it does hurt, but, it doesn't hurt that much. McDonald's pulled out, but now we've got Mac-M or whatever they call it, the replacement. And we've just renamed everything and we continue on as we did before, so it's just...
Yeah, and I mean, we do live in an interconnected world. And if you think about it, if I really want to sell stuff to Russia... or continue selling stuff, I just sell it to someone in Kazakhstan or whatever, and then they double export it, from the other country. That's how they're getting around with physical goods. There's been a bit of a thing in France. I don't know if you followed it. There's a big supermarket chain in France called Auchan. It's privately owned, massive, and has a kind of very good reputation, treats its staff well, all that kind of stuff. Massive in Russia. They haven't pulled out, and they're getting a lot of flack for it, but I just can't get my head around how come they've been able to not pull out. I'd need to talk to a legal journalist to understand that.
All right. Well, that's for people in other situations other than ourselves. Elsewhere in the world, is TV dead? That was the question. I thought it was interesting. All right. I like watching media results. I do a lot of podcasting research from the States and from Canada and Australia. So, because they're huge markets. All right. And my business is podcasting. And what I like about it is that you're looking at a huge market and you're seeing what's going on there. And then you're kind of getting surveys that are happening here in Ireland as well. And you're seeing kind of the same thing. All right. So, for example, with podcasts, 40% of people would have listened to a podcast at some stage. A third of people tend to listen to a podcast, at least one podcast a week. Brilliant. All right. And that's the same in the States. It's the same in the UK. It's the same in Canada. It's the same in South Africa. It's the same in Australia and stuff like that. However, so I was interested today to see a result from Nielsen. Okay. So they do all the TV measurement. And I think they do it in Ireland as well. Maybe not. Anyway, they do the TV measurement and they have a little box attached to TV screens to see what people are watching. And they have come out with a report to say that 40% of viewing on TV screens is streaming. It's Netflix, it's Amazon Prime, it's Disney, it's Hulu or whatever else they have. It's streaming apps. That's what people are 40%, which means that regular television, whether you're watching it on cable or whether you're watching it on free-to-air satellite or antenna or whatever, is down to 60%.
I would like to see some stats
how the
Europe.
world has changed. Yeah.
Because, it's definitely happening here as well. People are watching less broadcast television. But I think in America, there's also a very specific problem to do with cable. Really bundled everything together to absurd amounts. Your cable bill got out of control. Interestingly, the streamers are kind of starting to do that now. You need like 3 or 4 streaming services if you want to watch all the programs. So that could be a problem in the future. But, for me, I'm in two minds about this. On the one hand, you mentioned podcasts. Podcasts are amazing. I don't really understand the economics of them. I understand ones like this that are going out to a large audience. I understand very small niche ones. Maybe they're sponsored by a business for marketing. I don't get the massive chunk in the middle where it's like, you're trying to get a mass audience. You're not really getting one. How are you making any money? I don't really understand how that. But what I love about it is that these niche subjects are being addressed. However, we have lost or are in the process of losing people could talk about the water cooler movement. I think that's a silly phrase, but, there was a kind of general culture before. We all watched, whether you liked it or not, because there were only 2 channels, 3 channels, 4 channels, depending on where you were in Ireland. Claudius or Upstairs, Downstairs back in the 70s. And then coming into the 80s, you had lots of programs. And then when I was growing up, I remember a lot of aerials appeared in Dún Laoghaire pointing toward the north suddenly, because when Channel 4 launched, everyone had been watching TV from Wales in Dún Laoghaire, and they were like, oh my God, this is all in Welsh, I don't want that. So everyone had to get massive masts to pick up Channel 4 from the north. Now, growing up watching Channel 4, I got my education from, watching Peter Greenaway films and all sorts of stuff. Yeah. That's gone. Now, I know it's still out there, that there's contemporary culture, exciting, interesting, difficult, niche stuff being produced, but you have to find it. It's up to you.
Yeah. And actually, do you know what? You're right. It's really interesting, because at one stage, if there was a big series on TV, all right, now I'm going back decades to before our time, to Dallas or something, all right, where you would only see it on television. And if there was a particularly big storyline, or EastEnders or whatever, but you would have to watch and everybody would watch the television. You're getting those moments less and less and less now, because Netflix and Amazon, they're releasing box sets, and then people will watch them. I mean, look at Breaking Bad, all right, the first of the big box sets, I think, where that was kind of interesting how that grew, because certain people were watching it, and then a second wave of people would watch it, a third. Nobody was watching it at the same time, and you weren't getting that little, oh, did you see, or can't wait for tonight, and you would have that discussion. It would be something to talk about. I think that's gone. But at the same time, it's like Amazon, all right? We love Amazon and what it does, but it's terrible for the workers. For the TV, we want what we want to watch, and we want to watch it now. I'm not waiting until 8 o'clock when some guy in a suit in ITV decides that's when I'm allowed to watch. I want to watch it. I get really upset. I will not watch something on streaming TV if it's a series and they go, new episode every Friday. No. All right? Give me the entire series now, and I will binge watch it, or I will watch it at my own thing. Don't tell me that I have to wait until next Friday for the next episode.
I mean, it's amazing to me. I remember all my childhood, there were talk about video on demand was coming soon. Video nearly on demand arrived, which isn't on demand at all. And, we all sort of forgot about it. Yeah, sure. And then one day it was just everywhere, and our culture changed. We don't even call it video on demand anymore.
Yeah. And audio on demand as well. And podcasting is really changing. Radio and audio and that whole thing. And actually, also online is changing. Do you know in the UK, all right, more people listen to radio online than on FM?
That's amazing. I didn't
FM
know that.
radio is now the least.
I did know that AM is now basically dead. I think Radio 4 is still on long wave. All the other long wave stations are gone. I think Radio 5 still on medium wave, but that's probably talk radio with Talk Sport, and then that's it. Nothing else. Dead bands.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just interesting how technology is changing the world. Listen, last story for today. This is a nice juicy one, because it's all to do with tax. Well done, Jason. Tell us the tax story then.
Well, Gartner, the notorious, and well, not notorious, bad word, the famous IT analysts who analyze what's going on in the tech sector, what does it mean, understand the money of it, have said that AI is effectively a tax for developers. And what? Whoa. Well, the problem is it costs too much, and it is creating benefits, they say, but those benefits are all aggregating to OpenAI, to Google, to Microsoft, to the big AI platforms. They're not coming to the development companies, the software companies, but the software companies have to do it because they have to keep up. This is really interesting to me for 2 reasons. First of all, it's only a week ago that Goldman Sachs, the investment bank, said that generative AI was a bubble, and that it was, wasn't clear it was going to pop anytime soon, but they said it really has a lot less value than people think. And secondly, which is arguable, but it's interesting to hear. And secondly, there's already a lot of talk about the cost of AI, whether it's in terms of its energy use or the attendant emissions, or, who actually owns this technology. So to hear that companies are being forced to engage with AI by the market conditions, but it's actually not accruing any benefits to them, I thought was fascinating.
It is interesting. If you were to put money into an AI company, who would you put it into then?
I think most people are taking the picks and shovels approach. I mean, I wouldn't invest I wouldn't invest in Nvidia right now because the stock price is still elevated, but anybody that was invested in it before the AI boom has made a fortune. So actually the kind of underlying infrastructure, I noticed that shares in some of the big data center operators have also gone up. So I think there's concern that a lot of the small AI startups, they're startups, they may not be around. We don't know who's going to win. Obviously, Microsoft has boomed as a result, but all the chip manufacturers, with the exception of Intel, but that's for different reasons. But AMD's gone up, Nvidia's gone up an enormous amount, Broadcom's gone up. So kind of the hardware underlying AI, because the thing about AI is it requires enormous amounts of processing. Like the fact that we're getting it for free, it's really a loss leader, because if you type something silly into ChatGPT, can you do me a rap battle about Elon Musk versus the state of California or something? That costs someone a lot of money. You're sitting there laughing at the joke, but someone had to pay for the electricity to run that CPU to do that pointless task. So we're going to find out sooner or later what the real costs of AI are. We've seen environmental reports come out from Google and Microsoft, and they are shocking.
Do you think it's going to go that way? Because we've had the internet for as long as I can remember has been free. And it's taken an awful lot of change for things on the internet to suddenly be, I have to pay for that. All right. And one of the things that really kind of strikes me is it's more and more normal today to be expected to pay for content, especially with a newspaper or a magazine. All right. You can get X amount of free articles, or you can read the first 3 lines or whatever, and then you have to pay, and it's usually a small amount. And it's becoming more and more common. Do you know what I think was really interesting with the internet was that at one stage you just took your music for free. Now it was stealing and it was all pirated and stuff like that, right? But somebody came along with it was Apple. They came along with a really simple thing and they went, okay, listen, you can do all your flapping around with this and that and the other and trying to connect and waiting for downloads, or you can give us $1 a song and you can just download and play it instantly. Boom, done. And that's what people went for.
I'm a great believer in paying for things. I mean, look, when I was a kid, I did all the things everybody did, but listeners, obviously being listeners, can't see, but you can, Dusty. There's a whole pile of records behind me.
Oh my goodness. Vinyl.
Yeah, I know. And CDs. I'm not just vinyl. But, and DVDs and Blu-rays and books and all that. And I've got back into it because digital content has just made me, it's just, first of all, it's an embarrassment of riches. And second of all, as we were talking about earlier, you have to find everything. I want some curation done for me. So I kind of like the physical media, but even on digital media, I think newspapers and magazines should have charged from day one. I think it's a real problem that they didn't. I know that some of the bigger ones have had success implementing paywalls now, but I think the smaller ones can't do it because, who are you? Why should I give you money? How much am I getting from my money? I think we wouldn't have that problem if we'd done it years ago. I don't know if AI is going to be pay per prompt. It might have to be if it's as expensive as the reports suggest it is. But you're right, that's going to be a real cultural shift for internet users.
Yeah, because they're starting at it now, and it seems to be the usual. Like anything online is either it's a tenner a month or it's 20 quid a month. All right, and if you pay for it annually, you get 2 months free. That seems to be the general kind of costing the way everybody's doing it.
And they usually have a freemium thing where you can get a sort of limited service for free, and then if you want that
kind of
stuff,
a way, yeah, exactly, and that kind of sucks you. That's fine, but the thing is that all of those 10 and 20s add up. All right, I didn't know. We're a business, admittedly. All right, so we use, I would say, a few services, not a huge amount, but a few services. All right, and we were going through the accounts the other day. We're spending nearly $3,000 a year. All right, on various little services. All right, if you look at your personal life and you kind of think, all right, I'm subscribing to Spotify and I've got 1 or 2 streaming services, and then I have to pay for my internet, and then and all that, and you add it all up, it's like, well, holy moly. It's a lot. So what I'm waiting for, and it's something that was spoken about when credit cards first started being used online in the mid-90s, was micropayments. Nobody has cracked that yet, where you can just literally hit a button and say, that is going to cost me 2 cents. All right. Now, 2 cents, nobody's going to go, you just go, yeah, being done. All right. And you wouldn't think about it. And if that more and more people are doing that, and you had hundreds and thousands of people paying 1 or 2 cents for whatever it is, it would work out.
I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Revolut was working on that, because the reason that hasn't taken off is basically that there is an inherent fee associated with using the network, which goes to Visa or MasterCard, plus the payment acquirer, all these. There's a whole lot of companies invisible to us involved in how a credit or debit card works. But if someone could crack that, I think we'd see it.
Do you know what's changed? Before COVID, you would never buy a coffee with a credit card. Before COVID, you would never buy a chocolate bar with a credit card. Now you just boom, 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 boom. Everything. Do you know what I mean? If it's only €1 or €2, you take out your card, take out your phone, and you pay for it. So I think that micro thing is coming closer and closer than what we might expect. However, there we go. Listen, we're out of time for this week. Jason Walsh from Tech Central, thank you very much for keeping us up to date with what's going on in the world.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That's it for our show this week. Do check out some of the other stories online on techcentral.ie we didn't have time to include. Those stories include Ireland's increasingly split digital economy. There's a shocking number of software developers who are not familiar with secure software development practice. We've got the story on that. And also how a new chatbot is helping cleaners to break the language barrier. All of those stories and more at techcentral.ie. We're back again next Friday with a brand new show online and, of course, with RT Radio 1 Extra. In the meantime, do remember to share our podcast with a friend. If they're into tech, just tell them to look up Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify, or now on YouTube as well. Until then, from myself, Dusty Rhodes, and from Jason Walsh, thanks for listening. Take care.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland, or listen with RTE Radio 1 Extra. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.